Winter is coming.
Might just be the cold.
Winter is coming.
It's cold outside.
You don't know cold.
Winter is coming for him.
It's either me or this cold, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
And winter is coming.
You look cold, boys.
Tis a bit nippy.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
That's cold.
Winter is coming.
Mm-hmm. I'm cold.
It's cold and it's wet.
Winter is coming.
You're crying because you're cold?
You're a long way from home. And winter is coming.
I imagine you might be rather cold.
And winter is coming.
No, that's all right, I'm fine.
You're not. You're freezing.
Winter is here. What's going on, Russ?
Not too much.
Okay.
Getting ready to do another show with you.
The great Russ Winter is back with us here on the first Friday of every month moving forward now. So we get to kick off every month with Winter. So the first Friday of every month is Winter, and Russ Winter of winterwatch.net. We always have great conversations here. If you're not familiar with his website, go to it, bookmark it. There's always fresh content, and there's evergreen content as well. There are things that Russ has written that aren't always topical. Some of them are topical news items. There are other pieces that you can really dig into and get a lot of meaty information and news that is in some ways could also still be in the news cycle. So please go check out winterwatch.net. It's not just Russ being here on the show every month.
You know, and we've also, you and I, Robert and I have actually put together by now a pretty good archive of how the world really works. We've dug into things that I don't hear too much of this in other places.
Well, I think we have a unique ability to really use what you're working on with your website and the articles that are being written there, and use them as a really solid foundation for the shows. And then we can bring in other pieces of material, things that I've picked up, other stuff that you might have picked up, along the way since you've written an article. And that's part of a really, I think, dynamic process. So, that excites me when we can use the work, which we're going to do today. We're going to use some of your work and then get into a deeper discussion around a lot of this stuff. But today we have to honor one of our Chattarians who won first prize for the biggest tomato at the county fair. Russ, this is a moment.
That's Texas, though. That doesn't count. Everything big in Texas.
So Healing Heart Rosie did electroculture, and electroculture uses copper in conjunction with just growing, like copper is a conductive element, and it seems to increase the yield and the size of vegetables. So we always want to highlight somebody's accomplishments here. So
how did it taste?
Well, I think sometimes I think the taste is probably better as well, right? So we're gonna lean into it's just all better, right? So congratulations, Rosie, for winning first prize at the county fair. Russ, you ever grow any tomatoes back here in the States?
My mom did. So
did you ever win first prize?
My mom was a gardener. My mom was a gardener, and looking back at it, it looked like a lot of fun. But for some reason, I never really got into it.
So did you and the Winter family ever get into 4-H stuff there in Eastern Washington?
You mean Western? What you mean in Kansas?
in Kansas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not really. Not really. I mean, I've been to some of those events to go see the cows and goats, and so it's part of the culture.
So we were at the county fair last week. This is kind of a funny county fair story. So we're at the county fair, and of course, what do we do there? We had, I think we had nachos. We listened to some country western music, and I'm like, okay, we're at the county fair. Let's go look at the animals, right? Because they're showing the animals. And so we went to where they had the pigs. And there was this one pig laying on the ground. And you could tell that this pig was just parched. He was like, it's really hot there. It was really hot, right? He's like, so my girlfriend Joan, I said, Joan, why don't there was a hose there. So why don't you get that hose and why don't you give that little pig some water, right? So she goes and gives the pig some water, and then all of a sudden, the person who's growing the pig, raising the pig, says, "Oh, excuse me, could you please not give my pig any water? He's showing tomorrow." Like, what is that about, right?
Wow, dehydrate him, huh?
Yeah, it's like let's make sure that pig is lean and mean when the judges see him tomorrow, right? God forbid it should get any water. He's like,
that's against the rules.
Anyway, there's my.
That's like doping. It's like doping athletes.
It's kind of like doping. It's like anti-doping. It's like does the pig have? Is it like a wrestler and has a weight limit to meet or something? I don't know. It was.
The only thing I remember about those fairs is they smelled. The smell of the animals.
They do smell. Absolutely.
And after a while, it's kind of like, let's go to McDonald's.
Oh, pig. Hey, let's grab some ribs.
Yeah.
Let's get some barbecue ribs. I gotta put this up here real quick, Russ. So AR said, yesterday's 15 minutes was great. You offered some of the best analysis. Thank you, AR. Appreciate that. We got into Lahaina and a lot more yesterday. And have you dove into this Lahaina thing at all?
Oh, it really looks squirrely. You can't get fires there. I was in a fire in Kauai when I lived there.
Yeah,
but the fire department came and put it out. Kind of a close call on the buildings and the neighborhoods. I could see how it could really get out of hand if you got enough wind, but it's just kind of squirrely.
Yeah.
Something's off. Something's off. Even if it's a natural fire, it's like there's ways of kind of, getting these fires bigger and hotter that aren't necessarily natural. So it's the debate was it natural or not? Well, maybe it's something in between.
Maybe. I had a video yesterday, and it was these two cars that were outside of the fire zone. And everything around the two cars were intact. But these two cars were melted, like so melted that the aluminum from the door of the car trickled off the door and then puddled and then cooled and hardened.
Yeah, so that would take a lot of heat, or something like 1,200 degrees.
Right. And just those two cars, nothing around it. Right. Bit of a scorched area with, kind of the dry brush, but all the houses around those two cars were intact and outside of the fire zone of the village or the town.
Yeah, and I thought it was a little strange that there's boats burning out in the bay. I mean, offshore.
That's a good point. Yeah, and there were people who were out there floating on the water while they're watching the damn town burn. They had no place to go. I mean, and now apparently they're like fencing off everything with like black fence, and they don't want anybody looking at Lahaina. They want no pictures.
Well, that's prime real estate for developers and for the big guys. and so they'll assemble it in some way. And there's that one thing in, what was it, Knoxville a few years ago, the bomb that kind of went off in sort of this one area.
Oh, that was. You know what? That was. I think that was Nashville. Nashville. Yeah.
Prime urban real estate. So it's like urban renewal. If you want to clear out the riffraff, you can do this stuff, and they will do it. So don't kid yourself. They will do it. They will do this stuff.
Right. No, clearly that was a major part of Katrina. And you had all these generational families with their real estate, and they just weren't moving. Like, they just passed the house down to, the next family or the next generation. And the only way that they could move them out of there was to flood them out, right? And blow the levees, which is really what happened. And there was a guy, what was his name? His first name was either Judah or his last name was Judah. And he went in and he bought a shit ton of real estate in one of the wards just outside of the French Quarter before it happened, right? It was kind of like Larry Silverstein getting the insurance policy on the Twin Towers before they came down. Same deal. It was like, really? You just bought all that real estate that got wiped out, and now you get to go back in and redevelop it. Oh, that's
the fires in Australia. I kind of looked into that a few years ago and actually wrote an article on it. I think that was ecological arsonists.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with Rama Lama, who also knows Michi, who does my newsletters, and the conditions of a fire, which is you're getting into the sort of the natural part, the cultivation of the conditions, right? Like, there was a bunch of dry scrub that hadn't been dealt with in Kauai, which would obviously lead to
Maui.
a lot more kindling, right? So you might remember this. I don't know where you were in 2003, but I was living in San Diego, and we had these enormous fires in San Diego. We had them in East San Diego. We had them near Alpine in San Diego. And then there was another big fire happening in the Simi Valley, all simultaneously. And it was those three fires that were the second largest fires in California history. So I was living through that. I lived through these fires. Like, I was watching these freaking fires in the center divide and the freeway. It's really freaky when they happen.
Well, what's weird about California and Hawaii is the above ground electrical wires. That really surprises me, because you do get a lot of storms and wind and then they got this grass in there that's non invasive grasses growing all over the place.
Right.
So you can easily start a fire.
Yeah, to that point, they were not managing those things. In California, we had this Japanese bark beetle, and what it would do is it would go into the core of these oak trees and would eat the oak trees from the inside out. And so the oak trees would look kind of healthy from the outside, but they really weren't. So you had all these oak trees that had been hollowed out, and they were like big pieces of kindling, right? And the state of California didn't do anything about it.
Especially when you combine it with live wires.
Right. Or however, because now they're saying that they had turned the power off before the fire started. So if the
I saw footage of what I thought was some lines down, and they were live, kicking off sparks.
Either they're lying, right? Or there could be, it's kind of like, when they had the Boston Marathon, and you've done a ton of stuff on the Boston Marathon. There's this thing, what's it called? It's called echoes and shadows, or, where they're doing two things simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
Like they had the real kind of Red Cross thing, and then they had the triage Red Cross, so they could cut back and forth between these two events if they needed to, right? So I think the corollary could be something along the lines of what we're talking about, that there could be this kind of random detachment of the power lines, but there could also be another factor involved here, so that you can't really settle on just one of them, right?
Right. Exactly. Especially an event like this that's confused.
Yeah. So we're
But,
going to get.
but how many people died in this thing? They don't even know. And the other big coincidence, of course, the big quinky dink is that the sheriff there of the county is the same guy that ran the Las Vegas operation.
Las Vegas. What are the odds of that, right?
Yeah, it's basically Freemasonry.
Yeah, right. You want to expand on that a little bit? That's an interesting little remark. You
oh well, the police are loaded with Freemasons.
Yes, 100%.
It's almost at high ranks in some places a requirement, and so it's a big club, secret society, and they've got them placed. We talk about the fifth columnists and the leftists. This is another aspect of it. The infestation of Freemason secret society types into a lot of military and police.
Absolutely.
It might extend to the conversation we had at one time about the smiley face killers. I think that's, this thing we talked about last time about Long Island, weird place.
Yep. Yeah. I remember one time when my kid was really young, right? You probably did something like this. There was the field trip to the fire station. And I went on the field trip with my kid. Of course, he dressed up in his little firefighter outfit. And the captain of the fire station was wearing a Freemasonic ring. Like, oh, look at this. There you go. Here's your Freemasonic influence in the fire department, which is really an extension of what you're talking about.
It's just that 1% of the time when they're kind of called upon to do special tasks. 99% of the time, they're just normal Freemason type guys.
Right. I bet this one guy
doing charity and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Helping get fingerprint scans for your kids. You've seen that, right? Have you seen them at like county fairs or like farmers markets? They set up their stands, and they're there to.
No, really?
Oh, yo, swear to God. Yeah, no. I remember I was at one of these art fairs, wine and art fairs in Burlingame, California. And they set up a little table there. I'm like, really? You guys are doing this? I said, why are you? I asked them, I said, why are you doing this? Well, we just want to make sure the kids are safe. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, see, I'm a little bit Rip Van Winkle on the United States. Sometimes I hear things like in conversations like this.
I ran into this in 2005, but they have not stopped that practice, right? They go out, and this is part of their community service, is to get your kids fingerprinted and identified. So
it's probably a good idea, but it's also sort of conditioning.
It is a lot
people.
of conditioning. Yeah, for sure. So there was this one guy that I met one time. I was drinking at a bar, and you tell stories, and we started talking about Freemasons, and he said he was in court one day, and he was there. His case was coming up. There were other cases before him, and this one guy was ahead of him on the docket, and the guy had been in kind of the same part of the courtroom that he had been. And he noticed that he was wearing a Freemasonic ring, right? And he went up there and got in front of the judge, and he noticed that the judge was wearing the same ring. And as soon as the judge saw the guy with the ring, dismissed the case.
Mm-hmm.
That easy.
Yep. So, okay, so go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, because now you kind of opened a Pandora's box there with Las Vegas. It's a Mercury retrograde. We have to go there a little bit. So what was your take on what went down there?
In Las Vegas?
Yeah.
I looked deeply into that. I looked at almost every available film and tried to make sense of it, and it just had fake states written all over it. And you just stampede a bunch of people. You create a situation, little fireworks going off or rounds. They're literally probably shooting some rubber bullets at certain spots, and they may have had some snipers in there taking some shots at certain people that they might have been targeting. But I remember one scene. These girls are looking at everybody scattering. It says nobody's being hit. There aren't any bullets.
Right. And
so they stampede everybody out of there and just do their black magic. It was an amazing operation. I think I still have retained, if you want to look it up on my site, because I catalog all this stuff. Yeah, see if you can even find it. Look under Las Vegas. I forget the name of it. I've done so much of this stuff in the past, and I've kind of disengaged a little bit from it. Go find Las Vegas and see if you can find see if the footage is still up. For a long time, it was good, and I kept relocating it, the stuff that was lost.
The Garlic Festival too. Whatever happened to Jesus Campos? I remember him. Yeah, we're going down memory lane now. Boy, you did a lot on this.
Yeah, I did.
Let's see.
Because I thought it would be a good one that would wake a lot of people up, but boy, was I wrong.
Here's one. The story is coming apart.
Yeah, let's see. Let me take a look.
Let's put this one up here. Oh, that's by Ann Coulter. I guess you did a reprint on that.
Okay, we did The Mystery of the Las Vegas Shooter's Girlfriend, flaky type stuff. We did whatever became of Las Vegas shooter hero Jesus Campos. I wrote that in 2019. Okay, that highly revealing synchronized videos emerge of Las Vegas shooting. Let's see if anything's there.
Let's see.
Let's see if we still have some stuff to look at. Blondie video no longer available. Oh man, they just take them down. Look at that, one right after another.
So I was friends with a woman who was a nurse in Las Vegas, and I asked her if they had people going to the emergency room that night, and her answer was yes. So I think there was some action, but it's not the action that that the event was actually attempting to portray. There you go.
The only one that looks like it's left is the last one, the very last one. I had you notice that I had like about 10 different clips on there to analyze, and they're all deep sixed. But the very last one says Vegas shooting in 4K at every angle. Let's watch that because that's for some reason still up.
This one down at the bottom.
Let's just take a look at that. Let me go back up to where you are. See, where are you?
There's one with the. Is this it right here?
Very bottom. Very, very, very bottom.
Jesus, this has all just been deep sixed.
Yeah. That's why I don't really do this stuff anymore. Is
this the one first shots?
No. The very last one. Very last video. See it? Vegas shooting at every angle. Let's see what this one is. I remember this.
Here we go. Little Mercury retrograde special with Mr. Russ Winter.
It's the only really surviving videos that exist of this thing.
The return of Las Vegas. Russ, you want to narrate this a little bit?
Maybe, if I have anything to say.
So what are we looking at down here in the corner? This is like a wide angle from the back of the crowd?
Well, that's the hotel up there, right there, dead to the right. There's the stage.
So theoretically, that's where Paddock is, right?
Okay, so they're going to... Now all of a sudden, maybe you can hear the shot.
There he is, Mr. Small Town.
Yep. Hear the shots?
Yeah.
People are laughing, and now people are, getting the hell out of there. People are hiding and getting out of there. Now, tell me if you see anybody go down.
Well, I guess someone's really fucking shooting, huh?
Now, look at the people on top just standing there.
Fuck.
Be pretty tough to hit anybody at that distance, particularly when the crowd starts scattering.
Yeah, right. I mean, it would be very hard to actually pinpoint someone. So
I always wondered how he got the windows open.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many holes in this. Let's play a little more. So my takeaway on Vegas is that something happened there, right? I mean, what would be the reason that they would basically fake this thing, other than maybe some kind of gun control shit, right? There was something else going down there.
No, it's the strategy of tension. So you go back to the old Gladio events in the 1960s in Europe.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
They were very much about tension, creating tension. And these events are too.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, it's about gun control, but how the heck are you going to control this?
Well, Paddock also had a background as a gun dealer, right? There was that whole other side of Paddock where it looks to me like he was sheep dipped. And and that whole scene that theoretically happened in his room, like it's all fucking crazy. And you get the Jesus Campos guy who supposedly is the big hero of the event.
Yeah.
But Paddock has a very weird past, right? He's almost like a Lee Harvey Oswald kind of character in some ways. And he has that. Now there's some people.
Well, I mean, did you see all the weapons and equipment that he brought up into his room?
Yes.
This place has got security. You can't just walk in, bring an arsenal into a hotel and go up there and open up the windows. It's just implausible on its face. Yeah. And then shoot at that distance and kill injure a large number of people.
Right.
That's your starting point. And then I look at it now, years later, and I kind of say they pretty much deep sick this whole event.
They did.
That's proof. My post there is proof of that.
My theory about this is that Paddock was an arms dealer. He got those weapons up into the room. I'll tell you why he did. He had done it before. That wasn't his first time doing that. And he was an avid gambler, so he would do two things at once, right? He would sell guns out of his room. Who knows who he'd sell them to? And then he'd go down and he would gamble. That's why he was able to do that. I don't think, by the way, that he died. I saw a video of him supposedly after the event at another card table somewhere on the East Coast.
Yep. Yeah,
with a
there's that
date stamp,
going on.
right?
And then his whole thing with his girlfriend is really sketchy.
The girlfriend is really weird and really sketchy.
The problem is that your audience, probably most of your audience that didn't really get into this at the time, like I did, will never be able to analyze it. So the way I look at it, from my personal, I put a lot of effort into it. I devoted a lot of time to it. Now I look back and I said, fuck these people. They took all the evidence away.
Right.
And pretty much rendered my work, diminished it. And so for me to go back now and look at this now, it's just like, let's move on to the next topic.
Before we move on, there is a question I want to ask you about this event. And I'm sure you know this, like the Saudi guys that were running around in Vegas that night, right? You saw them.
Yeah, they kind of came into some kind of special airport or special.
Right. So there was some weird Saudi thing going on that night as well. And I wasn't able to completely connect the dots.
Well, see, they could bring in, as we're going to get into later about the synocracy, kind of the global crime syndicate. They could bring in all kinds of operatives from this stuff.
Right.
Saudis, who knows? Mossad, CIA.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then you had the weird event at the bar and grill in Southern California where they
I covered that one too. Yeah, and I covered Orlando a lot, and Orlando is very squirrely. Just didn't.
Yeah.
It's always blurry stuff.
Right.
That's black magic. You can't see things clearly. Yeah. And then everybody carries cell phones. It's pretty good quality footage, even back in those days, 5 years ago. Most of the cell phones, I tested them at the time. I had a screen test of 2017 quality cell phones. They take good pictures.
Yeah.
Well, where are they?
Right.
Where are, all these events? Brussels Airport, full of people.
Yep.
Las Vegas, Orlando, the Waukesha parade, the one they did in Skokie or whatever it was.
What happened to that dude in Waukesha? Is he still on trial?
You could see I don't know if it's still on trial because I'm not following anymore because I've kind of given up caring anymore about this stuff.
Right. Probably.
But I did watch a police interview with him. That's just flaky. He's kind of really narcissistic and full of himself and kind of a whiner.
Right.
And just doesn't seem genuine. That's not what somebody like that's going to be like. Just acting.
Right. Yeah. So again, it brings into question like how real was the entire event too? I mean, that's another side of this whole thing. All right. So why don't we move forward here? And let me go into our chat on Twitter. So do you want to start with the first link about the public companies facing bankruptcy? Is that where you want to go?
I kind of want to lead into that to kind of show you how what the system is doing now to set up an economic disaster. This is really revealing.
Okay,
Let's go back and look at let's go look at the neoliberal political economy of organized crime syndicate. No, that's not the one. Where is it? Oh, I had it up there.
I have new data. Half all public companies face bankruptcy. There's that. Then after that, I have our piece on Vivek that we're going to talk about.
Well, Vivek. Let's explain what the new Underworld Order is. I call it the triumph of criminalism. So let's go through that article, and then let's bring Vivek in, making commentary about the deep state and his opinion of what's going on, and we'll just talk about, or at least where I think he's wrong. So yeah, let's start with the new Underworld Order, triumph of criminalism. And it's a world in which official criminality driven by bribery, compromise, and corruption is the norm among all layers of governance. and the synocracy, which means conspirators, lust after global control so that they can be protected from exposure and punishment. So once you get the way I look at the political economy, the advantage of nations or states or regions, those entities have to answer more to their people. They're closer to their people, right? If you're the mayor of a city, somebody could come in and talk to you, supposedly.
Supposedly, yeah.
And so the idea is that a state of whatever, Oklahoma, can protect their citizens better than some international crime syndicate entity,
right,
or globalist. They don't care. They can use the global thing to protect themselves from exposure and punishment and to rule the roost. And so the primary crime of these guys is drug trafficking operations, which probably we should do a show on that, kind of modern show on that.
Right.
There's a really interesting Netflix recently on fentanyl and the Sackler crime family.
Yeah, I saw that pop up. And
pretty good show. They really gave direct shots at that family. Well, they had a drug trafficking operation. They gave billions to Israel.
Imagine that.
And what I thought very funny in that show, I didn't think it was funny, but it's typical, is that in episode 2, they start out, and for some reason they flipped in this scene of this family attending like Catholic mass or Catholic church at Christmas time. Why did they do that? What's that all about?
The Sackler family, really?
Yeah. They're Jewish.
Right.
Other than that, they really unloaded on them. Didn't spare them much at all.
Well, how insulated are they? I mean, obviously, they're incredibly wealthy in as much as they've had to fork out penalties or any kind of disbursements based on what OxyContin has done. So they still probably have a huge amount of cash in the reservoir. Of course. That's
why you have that's why you have globalists, so you can hide money like that.
Right.
And they avoided they pretty much avoided any criminal prosecution, and Rudy Giuliani was one of their lawyers. You pick up that in the show.
Rudy is he's interesting, right? Because he knows where all the bodies are buried. Like when he was the DA of New York, he basically had the Cosa Nostra handing him all these guys from the Italian mob, right? Like here's this guy, here's this guy, here's this guy. And so Rudy Giuliani built his reputation on the bodies of the Italian mobsters. But there was another group that was helping him limit their competition, which is what was going on. And so he used that. He climbed up on the body count of the mob and got elected mayor, right? And then, of course, he knows where all the bodies are buried in 9/11. And now he's representing.
He was sticking to that. He's sticking to that.
Totally.
I don't think he's a good guy at all. But anyway, they covered the trial, and these 3 big lawyers, Shapiro, Mary White, who was involved in the 9/11 cover-up, and Rudy. They were trying it in the western part of Virginia court, and then the attorney general got the attorney general, but the the prosecutor or whatever it was handling the case, got a call conduited through the White House under Trump, by the way, to cut a deal. And they just basically pled guilty to misdemeanors. It's in the movie.
Wow.
Yep, just slap on the wrist, and then they ended up paying $6 billion out, and a big settlement. So for the kind of criminality they were involved in, they got out pretty light.
The ruined lives.
But that's a good example of this. And so you have intelligence communities form wittingly or unwittingly the backbone, as they consist of essentially esoteric secret societies promoting a system of synarchy. And synarchy is ruled by secret societies. It's the essence of the conspiracy of Illuminists and Frankists, which we've gotten into. I mean, regular listeners have been paying attention to us know what I'm saying when I say these words. And you can go into our archive and watch our show about that to get background. So treat these shows like encyclopedias.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and
you can reference them back for sure.
Who secretly place their operatives in key posts or alongside the holders of power, so that only the universalist criminal policies of the new, I call it the new Underworld Order. They're very double-minded. Double-mindedness is the essence of Hegelian dialectic methodology, which creates conflict to make progress or advance history, manipulating opposing forces in what to them is an exclusively mechanistic world. So there's no spirituality here at all.
Right.
Claims of synarchic conspiracies are denigrated as fantasies so that further inquiry is thereby cut off at the pass. Or as we just saw with the Las Vegas event, it's just wiped clean.
Yeah.
My article has been wiped clean, other than the words. Yet a leading figurehead of the new underworld movement, Vladimir Lenin, defined it for all he to see. So here's what he said in his pamphlet, What is to be Done? The Burning Question of Our Movement, number 10. Lenin expounded, quote, "In form, such a revolutionary organization may also be described as a conspiratorialist organization, because the French word conspiration is the equivalent of the Russian word zavagor, conspiracy, and such an organization must have the utmost secrecy." So when you talk about these conspiracy theories and these secret societies, it's not exactly like this hasn't been discussed before.
Right.
And this goes back several hundred years. Folks, it's more than just a Taco Bell commercial.
Yeah.
It's been trivialized to that. And yet you have George Washington writing letters to his friend in 1796 or 1797 before he died. They were discussing the role of Illuminism in the French Republic and debating, or the French Revolution, debating its influence in the United States. And George Washington kind of poo-pooed it a little bit, but it was an open discussion between two friends about this very topic.
Right.
So it's not like it hasn't been around and people haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
That's just a key point I would make. And so you got this Weishaupt guy in a letter to a conspirator dated February 6, 1788. Weishaupt wrote that, quote, "In particular, every person or a candidate for what they call the order should be made to spy on another and all around him. Nothing can escape our sight, so that the trustworthy alone will be admitted to a participation of the whole maxim and political constitution of the order. The ugly reality is that all the main governments are controlled by dark forces resident within intelligence communities, which are in control and out of control. In looking back at hidden history, there are clear indications that men of influence in the past were keenly aware of the threat of Illuminist Freemason infiltration. In 1807, Goth wrote that Freemasonry creates a state within a state. And then I mentioned the Washington Snyder correspondence. I have a link to their letters. And then, so what Snyder is doing is pointing out this Robeson guy, who was one of the leading scientists of that era. And he got into it. Like I say, the point to be made is this conversation was occurring and continued to occur at the highest levels of intellectual life at the time. It was hardly dismissed as crazy. The short version is that Robeson considered Masons a power grab by nefarious, nasty characters using Jedi mind games to run herd over the masses. Now, this is from his classic book, Proofs of a Conspiracy. He says, "I bind myself to perpetual silence." This is the oath. Here's the New Underworld Order oath as put forth by Robeson 200 years ago. I bind myself to perpetual silence and unshaken loyalty and submission to the order in persons of my superiors, here making a faithful and complete surrender of my private judgment, my own will, and every narrow-minded employment of my power and influence. I will conduct myself as required by the order. I will pledge myself to account the good of the order as my own, and am ready to serve it with my fortune, my honor, and my blood. The friends and enemies of the order shall be my friends and enemies. See, there's benefits to joining this.
Oh,
you get promoted. You get a lot of times wealthy. Chris Milligan wrote 2003, about the Order of 322 is a multi-generational cult that believes in the power of death to bring about change. A group of zeitgeist initiates believing that the end justifies the mean and uses mass deaths to feed their necromancy. So Maui, how does something like Maui fit in there? I don't have any proof, but it's part of the pattern. The end justifies the mean.
Yep.
Illuminism is twisted, means light upon the world. The authority of the ruling powers is represented as of inferior moral weight to that of the order. Weishaupt taught that these powers are despots when they do not conduct themselves by the order's principles, and it is therefore our duty to surround them with its members, meaning the order, so that the profane may have no access to them. So it's a power grab. So we have a candidate. I thought it was a very interesting conversation. And Vivek he likes to talk. I'll give him that. Some ways I kind of like the guy because he does explore topics like this. It's not completely taboo for him to address this stuff. But let's listen to what he had to say, compare it to what I just described.
All right. Let me
and then you can give me your opinion of what he says and him.
Okay, let me go in here and grab the video.
I write about Justin Trudeau. In instances such as Justin Trudeau, mental mapping and prior sensitivity training has been so extreme that almost his entire verbal output consists exclusively of vapid, prefabricated ideological slides. That's what they do. And then install a guy like that into power.
Right. All right. Let me see. I've got Vivek queued up here. And let's play.
This is not. I don't agree with Vivek, but let's just hear him espouse this.
A deep state that is absolutely the chief policymaker in this country, and the elected officials are really just people who enjoy being on cable television at night. They say, okay, give them that. We don't. The people in the deep state, they don't thrive on attention and ego. So we'll give the Nancy Pelosi's and the Joe Bidens and the Republican equivalents the ego hit, the dopamine hit from being able to be a famous person who stands in front of a camera, when in fact, the real laws of this country are not passed in Congress, that is designed to look like a beautiful building. I took my 3-year-old son there, 3-4 weeks ago, maybe 3-4 months ago, when I was there for a Sunday show. It feels like you're going to a museum because that is not where the laws of this country are passed. They're passed in the drab administrative buildings that you would never dare go. It's designed to look and be boring for a reason. And I think once you see that, you understand why it is we are where we are. Because the question is, why on earth would we put these people in charge who couldn't pass a basic cognitive test if they were asked to perform a function or an activity of daily living? And the reason is that actually is just a symptom of the deeper problem, which is that the people we elect to run the government aren't even the ones who are actually running it. And that was by design. And that's what I'm going in to fix. But we have to be able to see that with clear eyes. It's not just I'm a young guy versus these older guys. It's that I'm an outsider running against a system that is designed to keep the democratically accountable people, let alone an outsider, out of their business. And that's what's going on.
I mean, I see that, and I've been calling this out for a long time. I mean, a lot of people have been calling this out for a long time, especially when it comes to the deep state and the puppets and all this stuff. But, you know, maybe you have a little more insight. I can't figure out who the deep state is.
It is not. So this is the whole point. It is not one person. The model of there being one puppet master individually saying that I'm pulling the strings, it's the wrong mental model, right? In fact, in many cases, it's comprised. This is the harder part to see, because then it gets really confusing when you first think of it this way. There are many good people as individuals in their individual capacities, as lives, as fathers, as neighbors, as coaches, who are part of that machine. It's the nature of the beast itself is not comprised of one human being with an intention. It is the machine, the Leviathan itself, that goes beyond a human individual. So it is a creation that's a beast. Think about the FBI, right? So I've said I would shut down the FBI, and I can go into the details of how to do it. One of my motivations for being in this race certainly is I am the single presidential candidate in the last 30 years who has the deepest understanding of how to actually shut down the deep state, the administrative state. And we can talk about that. But the FBI is one of the institutions that I've said that I would just shut down. Most people who work at the FBI, I genuinely believe it, are individually good people. But they're part of a machine that is bigger than the sum of its parts, that has a culture unto itself. It is still the J. Edgar Hoover building of the FBI that people walk into every day and report to for work. It is an agency built in the shadow of a legacy that was fundamentally corrupt even at its inception, or at least through most of the 1930s and 40s when it got off the ground. And so that is really what we have to see, is this isn't a human that we're up against, any individual human. It's individual human beings, democratically elected representatives of the actual democratic will of the people, up against a machine, a monster that we've created that actually has to be shut down in order for us to actually have any chance of winning. And I can go into great detail on that.
So it's not an individual. Is it an entity of individuals that are all conspiring together, or is it totally decompartmentalized?
It's totally decompartmentalized. I think that's
bullshit.
All right, let's stop there. Let's stop there.
Yeah.
All right. When he says it's totally decompartmentalized, and you throw a flag on that.
Yeah.
Why do you take?
I don't necessarily disagree with this decompartmentalized in some extent, but his next comment was, it's not a group of people controlling.
Right.
It's just he just thinks it's kind of some kind of osmosis, or it could be. There's a term called egregore, which is sort of.
I was just going to go there. I was just going to go with the egregore, because the egregore is the thought form that has a mindset that's an aggregation of a collective group of individuals, right? And it takes on its own life, and I think that what he's pointing to, and ultimately what I think what he's trying to uncover is this egregore. But to your point, I do think there is compartmentalization, and I do think that there are people who can move the tide or decide that, we really want to have a deep water port in Lahaina, and we want to turn that thing into a 15.
It goes back to a term that we use all the time in our shows that I'm living by. I mean, it's my worldview and my philosophy, the turtle on the fence post. Vivek, who put these people there? You just think they just accidentally stumbled into this?
Right.
Or some kind of common attraction?
That gets back to his comment around democratically elected. Well, really? I mean, how many of these people are really democratically elected? You redistrict, you rezone, right? I mean, we know how this game has worked. I mean, he's presupposing that everybody there got there based on a just, fair, and due process, which I completely disagree with, right? Yep. Those people who are there have been placed there for the reasons that you and I are talking about and that he's trying to break down. They are not incidental in part of the ornaments of the deep state. They are the deep state.
Yeah, it's very organized and very secretive.
Absolutely, and
he's kind of distracting from that, so I'm kind of disappointed.
I mean, he's at least opening the subject matter.
Yeah, exactly. He is opening the subject, but he's being a little bit of a, I hate to say it, but a limited hangout.
Well, my thoughts around Vivek is that if I were the Republican Party, I would want to have somebody who was more of an outsider than Trump, basically start to scrape off MAGA, right? And basically divide sort of the MAGA camp or become the MAGA magnet, right? So if I were the Republican Party and I knew that most of the people had no appetite whatsoever for Mike Pence or Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis, but I sure as hell didn't want Donald Trump representing our party, this would be the guy.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying that
because you and I and a lot of people want to hear what he has to say. We're all ears. I'm all ears during this conversation.
Here's what I think. Vivek is so slick and so smart, and he is incredibly good in the moment with the parry and the volley and the thrust, right? He's he doesn't get flustered. Like, he has thought through a lot of these things and he knows what his positions are. When he was at the debate, he said that, and I know exactly why he was doing this. He said to people there in attendance and on camera that he wanted to end aid to Israel. He said that.
Yeah. Now he's backpedaling.
Of course, why did he say that? He said it to trigger Nikki Haley. And of course, Nikki Haley did exactly what Vivek knew she would do. She lost her mind, right? And because Nikki Haley wants to, she's deeply, deeply devoted towards this idea of Zionism.
Yeah, Nikki Haley exposed herself as solely the Israel first candidate and nothing more. She has, there's nothing else to her.
So Vivek took a page out of Trump and he threw a hand grenade in the middle of the room, right? To see what would happen.
Well, he's a disruptor, no question. He's a disruptor.
Absolutely. So then he backpedals on this, and then he says, I'm going to be the best candidate for Israel ever. I'm going to be so pro-Israeli, right? And he does it without any kind of cognitive dissonance or shame. This is the genius of Vivek. He could get you to believe that just after he said that he was going to cut off aid to Israel.
Right.
So he is very clever.
Yeah, very slick, clever. As you say.
Super slick. The other guy.
Now, of course, he can't, in this situation where we're listening about this deep state, his definition of it and how it works, in some ways he's kind of trapped because you can't come out because of all the years of conditioning about conspiracy theories and, Illuminati and Taco Bell commercials. He would look kind of foolish if he gave the Russ Winter explanation for it. Well, he really can't. He really can't. I mean, maybe he can do it a little bit, but he'd have to be. People would dismiss him. That's very unfortunate because this is the system, the world we're living in. This is how they do it.
So there, part of the critique of Vivek is that he's not really who he says he is. That he had the Soros scholarship, and he of course he explains that away. That basically this Alzheimer's drug that his family managed to get approved, it was basically a pump and dump, right, on the market, and and they jumped through a bunch of hoops to get this thing done, and that's how Vivek made a shit ton of money. As far back,
he says that they had 5 other drugs that made the company. He comes right out and admits the Alzheimer's drug was a failure. And then he points out that most drugs and trials and like this fail. It's normal part of business. But we had successful drugs, and we created a $10 billion company. That's his explanation. To me, that actually sounds feasible.
And then you go back and look at his response around COVID and the vaccines, and he's kind of on the same page as the mainstream during that time, right? Like he's in alignment with Big Pharma. He's in alignment with Fauci. He's in alignment with the protocols. And it's like, okay, well, did you wake up? Did you get your dose of a deep enough dose of the deep state so that you see this differently now? So he's really brilliant. I think Vivek is brilliant. Dr. Shiva says he's a snake, right? And Dr. Shiva is pretty brilliant in his own right. So you have these kind of two dueling, Brahmin caste Hindus or whatever, right? They're at the top of the food chain in their community, in their world, and they're kind of dueling at each other. They're kind of sniping at each other. Dr. Shiva doesn't like him. He doesn't trust him. So, I think that he's going to be in this race, provided we have an election. And I think we're going to have an election.
He's kind of a flame, again, I like him because he's kind of a flamethrower, and I like disruptors.
He's bringing things to the public square, right? He's bringing things to the public. Like there's a guy on YouTube named Anomaly. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but he's this young guy, and he does these reaction videos, and he'll bring up something like he'll bring up Trump's vaccine policies, and he'll go over everything with a fine-tooth comb, and he'll find the inconsistencies in it, and he'll throw it back out to the Trump people, and he'll say, "Really, you want to vote for this guy when he was clearly on the side of Big Pharma from the first day?"
And now Trump's disavowing. Now Trump's disavowing all this stuff.
Well, of course he has to now.
Yeah, but very, very bombastic, aggressive statements criticizing.
Right, now he has to, right?
Yeah.
But Vivek is going to go on his show and be interviewed by him and debate him. So I've got to give Vivek some credit for going on to this guy's show, because it's not that he isn't popular. He is. He's friends with Roseanne Barr. He's friends with Candace Owens. He's been on Jason Whitlock's show. Not Vivek, but Anomaly. So he has some standing sort of in our world.
Yeah, and he's kind of fearless. He's not afraid.
I'm talking about Anomaly. I'm not talking about Vivek.
Oh, right? Okay.
So he's no Joe Rogan or he's no Pat Bet David, but he's got a pretty good audience. But Vivek will go, to his credit, he's going to go on to his show. So I think that says something about Vivek that I think is remotely interesting.
Yeah.
Like he's like, nah, you're small potatoes. I'm not going to come on your show. No, he's accepted a challenge. You want to show and debate him. So I'll give him credit. My theory is that he's positioning himself to be Trump's vice president. That's what I think.
Yeah, he doesn't really criticize Trump. He says Trump was a reasonably good president, and kind of feels his pitch is he got overwhelmed. But I have some things to bring, the special sauce and special knowledge to bring to the table, and how to deal with this deep state he's talking about here that he doesn't truly understand.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, the deep state is pretty much what we just read in my article. That's what it is. It's a synarchy that puts it's the synarchy combined with the turtle on the fence post, and you got to find ways to attack that and break it down. Now he's saying, okay, I'm going to go fire everybody in the FBI. Well, that might be a little extreme. Aren't there people in the FBI that are salvageable?
Well,
you can't just tear the entire government down after it's been captured.
Thomas Sowell would have some young Thomas Sowell. I mean, he's still pretty good. He's old, but he would have a very interesting take on dismantling an institution like the FBI, because there's always unintended consequences,
right,
around stuff like that, right? Like Thomas Sowell, I've been listening to a lot of Thomas Sowell lately, and he really went pretty deep into slavery. And he looked into who was pro-slavery, who was anti-slavery, and even people who were anti-abolitionists and who had slaves, like this guy, John Randolph, were very articulate and were very aware of the consequences of just ending something. Right? It was you just couldn't do it because they had thought through all of these things, and that the potential pitfalls of simply ending it because somebody in the North thought it was a noble, right, and spiritual ideal that it would solve everybody's problems was like based on just a huge amount of oversight. So to say, well, I'd end the FBI on day one, there are unintended consequences for stuff like that. You got a bunch of people now with the FBI who are no longer at work. What are they going to do? Right? They're going to go work for people that are going to be able to employ them with their prior knowledge. So now you'll have a bunch of private security companies, private security industries employing these people who have had access.
Yeah, he's going to transfer them and really put them under the control of the synarchy, the globalists.
Exactly. So would it be better to eliminate parts of the FBI, reorganize the FBI, limit the powers of the FBI? Sure, absolutely. Go back to when Carter was president. Carter hacked a lot of CIA guys when he went in. Right? You remember that?
Yeah, he tried to.
Well, they did him in at the end.
Yeah.
They did him in. And even when Carter was, kind of, well, he wasn't looking the other way. They deployed the CIA into Angola. And then by that point, Carter was like, okay, you got me. I'm here. I'm gonna do what you want to do, right? But there were unintended consequences, and they got him. They got him with, guess what? Iran-Contra. They got him with the damn helicopter and the aborted rescue. They caught up with Carter. So that's the unintended consequences. And even when Trump, when he came out and said, I'm going to deal with the intelligence apparatus or the deep state. And Chuck Schumer came out and says, they got 6 ways to Sunday to get you. Right. So he's right.
Well, they've been this group of synarchists have been at this stuff for hundreds of years.
I would go close to thousands.
Even further back. Yeah. I would say since Jacob Frank and Rothschilds, and then into the French Revolution. And then, I have a series of articles about these yahoos. That's what I've devoted my work to.
Right.
We're just kind of exploring the edges of it right now. So he's barking up a weird tree if he just thinks that this is just organic.
Right. Or again, because I like to play devil's advocate, that he's either the GOP's plant, because the GOP knows that Donald Trump will not be at these debates. Right. He won't be there. But if they don't want him, which I tend to believe that they don't, and they know full well that Mike Pence and Nikki Haley and all these other clowns, the American people have demonstrated that they don't want politicians anymore. That's why Trump was popular. That's why Vivek is getting a lot of shine, right? They understand that. They can't just roll out their same old candidate and hope that they can go mano a mano with the resident, whoever Joe Biden is in the White House. By the way, I think that candidate's going to be Gavin Newsom. I think Gavin Newsom is going to be the Democratic candidate.
Oh man! Oh, talk about synarchy.
And whoever faces off against Newsom is going to have a very, very tough time, because he is everything that the progressive side of the deep state, or the left side of the deep state, he's everything that they want in a candidate, because he can make the most extreme positions sound rational and that they're for the betterment of society, and not in an airy-fairy way.
So they could
Right.
set up a real Hegelian dialectic divisive campaign around these two guys.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you what, the problem is that Vivek is going to be labeled as a conspiracy theorist, and they're just going to lump anybody that thinks remotely like him or addresses things in the manner that he does as crazy. And
well, it depends.
Let the roundups begin.
Here's what I think. It depends on how they deal with him. And he's really, really good. Anybody, I'm telling you, anybody that can say that he was going to defund Israel during the middle of that debate and watch Nikki Haley lose her shit and then come back a week later and act like he never said it. And not only that, but position himself with 100% sincerity and complete buy-in that he'll be the best president Israel has ever had. That guy's dangerous, right? He is really dangerous because the media, and who was it? Was it, I think it was Lawrence O'Donnell who was trying to nail him on this stuff. And he was like Neo in the Matrix dodging bullets.
What he said was that he would be a friend of Israel because he could guide them to correct policies. That's essentially what he said. You know, the whole aid thing is like a carrot and a stick. That's really what he said, carrot and stick.
Yeah.
Use against them so that they just can't run Rothschild. You know, what's the word? Rothschild? Rothschild?
Roughshod.
Rothschild.
You could throw Rothschild in there. I think we came up with
that's good. That's a Freudian
Rothschild over him.
So yeah, that's what he said. I can maneuver him because I'm going to be. I understand what the shit's going on out there. That's how he purveys himself. Well, he demonstrates here that he doesn't really understand how deep this rabbit hole goes.
So I would assume that Vivek, because he went to Ivy League schools, I would assume that he has contacts, friends that he's developed through his, peregrinations through academia and getting his degrees. And
I would really like to know who these people are. He says he has a staff working on his administration right now. They're finding people. That would be cool if he's creating a whole new state, a whole new apparatus.
Unlike Trump, who had all these political favors. Here's my theory on Trump. And you can certainly chime in on this. My theory on Trump was that he was pushed to finally run because he was always flirting with running, right? And so somebody said, hey, listen, if you run, you're going to get all these donors. Sheldon Adelson's going to be behind you. The Mercer family is going to be behind you. And oh, by the way, you're going to have the military behind you. So there's a really strong chance that in a field of very weak candidates, this is your time. So Trump is like, okay, I'm going to do it. So he goes in and he's running, right? And I've thought about this, and I love your opinion on it. When Ron Paul ran for president, he was basically saying everything Trump was saying, only with a lot more economic background and theory. And what did they do with Ron Paul? They stuck him at the edge of the debate stage. And people like Tucker Carlson made fun of him. Now, we know that Trump is famous. He had a reality show. And if the media wanted to give Trump the Ron Paul treatment, clearly they could have.
You mean Rand Paul? Rand Paul?
Ron Paul. No, Ron Paul.
Oh, okay, before.
When Ron Paul ran for president in 2008.
Yeah.
Right? So the media embraced Trump. And even when it got sloppy with, the grab the pussy comment, right? And Trump was able to, maneuver around that, whatever. The media embraced Trump because, number one, they knew it was good for their ratings. But number two, I believe that the plan was to get him elected. And the left and the deep state part of the left, not just the left, the deep state part of the left, they wanted him elected. They wanted him to be in office.
So they can sabotage. He can sabotage himself, and they can sabotage him. Combination.
Absolutely. Now, and I brought this up. They have this thing every year in New York. It's a benefit, and it's what is it? The Al. I always want to say Smith, but it's not Smith.
Yeah,
it's this benefit. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, where Hillary was there.
That's right. Did you watch that? Did you watch that event?
Yeah. Hillary,
okay.
yeah, it's Al Smith something or other. Yeah,
right. So do you remember when Trump just took a flamethrower to the room? Like he just torched everybody. I'm like, my God, these are people that theoretically have been your backers and might be your backer, and you're not leaving anyone in that room untouched. And he was quite funny, but it was ground zero. And then I remember watching him walk out of there with Melania by themselves. And he looked like the loneliest man in New York. And I thought to myself, is this guy going to win? Like I had said he was going to win, right? And then, okay, so Russ, when that event is over, and you can see all the people that were there, Gail, Oprah's girlfriend, was there, and Chuck Schumer's there, and she's with Huma Abedin. And as she's leaving, she is like almost being carried out on people's fucking shoulders, right? Like she's, chatting, and I mean, the room was hers. And you contrast that with Trump and Melania just kind of like, skulking out of the room by themselves. And then when Trump won, I'm convinced that he was shocked. I've watched it again and again. He is like dumbstruck that he won the election. And I think what happened is that a couple days before the election, they told Hillary, you're not going to win. This is the plan. This is the plan.
I wrote an article back in 2016 looking at who counted the votes and who controlled the ballots.
Yeah.
Soros.
Yeah.
Soros was the big shareholder and owner of the dominant ballot counter in the United States. So how could Trump win under those circumstances? Explains why Biden won, but Trump,
right?
Unless that was the intent.
I think the intent was to get him to win. Because this gets back to where you were talking about with Vivek and putting everything in place, right? If you go back and look at what Obama, apparently, I wasn't aware of this, but Obama passed like a law or some kind of like civil code or something around civil employees, like government employees, like what happens, how you process them. So basically, Obama made it almost impossible for Trump to fire the leftover Obama staff.
Supposedly, although Vivek says there's ways around it. He knows ways around it.
Well, he knows, but maybe Trump didn't.
But
right?
the way around it, Vivek explains it as you just fire entire agencies and departments. Right. You can't individually fire. See, that's the problem.
But that's what happened. It was a setup, right? It was a total setup. And then those people that were there were constantly leaking shit. So there was no traction whatsoever. And from day one, they went into Russia collusion. They went into what's his name, the general that got shit canned by Mike Pence because he kind of lied to Mike Pence. Well, Mike, what's his name, right? They sent him over to Russia because he was told to. He asked Obama. So Obama said, "Yeah, you can go." It was all set up. They had everything there. They had, that whole operation was ready to go, and it was just the beginning stage of an offensive against Trump and the American people and people that had voted for Trump. And I think that Trump became the wicker man, and they were going to burn this thing down. That's my take on it.
Yeah, of course, the other interesting element about Vivek is he's front and center on the woke issue. I don't see these other candidates as being there.
Right.
And the woke thing, that's a live wire for voters. That's a real live wire. People have had enough of that.
Yeah, he's
I
a
think
younger.
the majority of the people of the United States, even liberals, have had enough of this woke stuff. So Vivek's right there. He's got all of his talking points. He wrote a book on the topic.
Right.
That tells me that he could really emerge, and
Oh,
kind of in a divisive
I have
way.
no
Kind of in a
doubt.
divisive way. He's not. To go up against the woke crowd. You can't be a nice guy. You got to be kind of nasty.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yep. Do you want to get into the economic stuff?
Yeah, because I found something I thought was kind of interesting.
Before we do that, you don't have to get granular about your professional life, but that's a world you come from, right? You come from understanding markets, the economy, right? That's you. So it's not like you're just a guy who's found this bit of data on YouTube. This is actually an area where you have some deep understanding, correct?
Yeah, and I have I didn't write the book, but I found a author, a very neglected economic superstar by the name of Professor Susan Strange, who died in 1998. So she's been gone for quite a while. London School of Economics. And so it's called Political Economy. And she wrote a series of groundbreaking books. One is called Casino Capitalism, States and Markets, The Retreat of the State, and Mad Money. And Strange showed how epidemic levels of financial crime were a consequence of specific political decision based on ideology. And here's what she said. She said there are 4 ways she showed how politics and financial crime epidemic are intimately connected. Money is global, regulation is national. So that goes back to my point about why they want globalism. She says there's nothing inevitable about financial globalism, Strange said. It was born out of a series of political decisions. It means that global money can skip freely across borders beyond the reach of national laws and supervision. For smart operators, taxes, regulation, and compliance becomes a choice, not an obligation. And Strange argued that international organizations lack the power to control global money. Only coordinations between, the nations or smaller entities can rein it in. You following that?
Yep.
Tax havens are an open invitation to embezzlement. So it's grown exponentially since she's died. But she spotted it early on, kind of wrote the warning. Unless you have somewhere to stash the cash, the looting of public money and state enterprises can only go so far. Tax havens give open invitations, Strange says, to corrupt politicians to steal from their people. Banking secrecy in the havens allows money from tax evasion, drug trafficking, public embezzlement to mix together until they become indistinguishable from legitimate business. Extravagant banker bonuses contaminate politics. Obscenely large bonuses, access to cheap money. I'd add that on there. Money is political power. Globalization has redefined politics. That's why they like it so much, because once you globalize, then you can concentrate all your political power through money on control of the world. That's got to be stopped. That's very fundamental. Political power is not just what happens in governments, but money and markets also have power. So anybody that's debating this topic with their family or whatever, that's what you want to key on. These globalists are not interested in you.
No, not at all. No.
They have a completely different agenda.
Yep.
As legitimate and illegitimate private operators go rich, they increase their power to shape the world system. States starved of tax revenues grow weaker and retreat, and eventually becomes a reinforcing spiral. National politics between can become captured by global markets. Now, I think it's basically neoliberalism is Trotskyism.
Yeah.
It's essentially Trotskyism refashioned for the needs of the global financial kleptocracy. Kleptocracy meaning crooks, steal. Instead of proletariats of all countries unite, we have neoliberal elites of all countries unite. And then there's an article that I wrote about firebrand Bolshevik Leon Trotsky, fully backed by international banksters and pederast British War Party. So you got banksters, you got a bunch of pederasts, you have the War Party have kind of congregated around this form of Trotskyism.
You know, what's really interesting is when you talk about these crime syndicates, and this is something that I've brought up before, is that you have this UNO, right? This Underworld New Order. But even in that world, you have different groups in that world that are also jockeying for power and resources, right? Like you have the Clinton family, which could be considered a crime family, or you have the Bush family, which is another crime family, and then you have the Trump family, right? You have all these different groups and families that sometimes, just like any other mob, they'll work together, right?
Yeah.
And then there are other times where they'll have turf wars, and they'll have a St. Valentine's Day massacre.
I was just watching The Godfathers for the first time in 50 years. That's it.
Yeah. So I mean, really, you have the kleptocracy. It goes back to people like the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers, but there's a lot of other families that are also in the mix, like the Goldschmidts are a really big family, also in Europe. Then you have the black families of Italy who have been around for freaking thousands of years, right? I mean, going back to the Medicis, I mean, these people have accumulated massive amounts of generational wealth. And there are people you and I don't even know.
No,
that
right?
That are in this mix, right?
We're going to keep it under the radar, but there's also the drug cartels. Those guys really have a lot of money.
Well, so here's my theory on the drug cartels. My theory on the drug cartels is that they are a subgroup of these other families.
Right.
Like I don't think they may appear to be independent.
Well, they're tied. They're very much tied into intelligence agencies too. They have to be
intelligence agencies, but I also think that a lot of so this is what I have heard, on the grapevine, the conspiratorial grapevine, that you don't do any drug deals in this country of any proportionate size unless Warren Buffett knows about it, right? That's what I'm talking about. That there are people who have these legitimate businesses that look like legitimate titans of industry, that they have these other things going on beneath the surface. And that when you see like the various cartels, they're not, I mean, they're in charge, don't get me wrong, but they're answering to somebody else, right?
Well, and the same is true of the pharma industry. You could kind of throw them all sort of into the same lot.
Right. Yeah. So again, when you get into like the nitty gritty of this stuff, you will find that there are really, I wouldn't call them strange bedfellows, but you'll find that there are people that are connected to illicit trade and illicit activities that theoretically have, very quote unquote reasonable or respectable positions and occupations, which takes us back into things like Freemasonry and the double-mindedness, right? So it's a lot trickier than we understand, and a lot murkier than we understand. I think the interesting part is that there hasn't been as much widespread awareness around this that I can ever think of. Like, there was a time when Lindbergh and Ford were around and they were writing, the books like The International Jew and stuff like that. And, that was more common and popular than people really understand, right? These guys were kind of at the center of American culture, and they were very, vocal about things like
tuned into the system, what's going on with the system, and
absolutely.
how the system could be under attack by this very thing we're talking about, this whole neoliberalism. But
Exactly.
what I notice are sometimes you can kind of spot in different policies. Did we talk last time we talked about the employee retention credit?
No.
We didn't get into that. Okay, there's an article I have called Bankrupting America with a Corrupt Employee Retention Credit. That was designed around COVID. So COVID was really a scam because it allowed these big boondoggles to take place, huge amounts of money, checks to be sent out. And, they sent it out to everybody in the public, but they also did it to employees. And so you get a $26,000 credit if you kept your employee on the payroll during COVID. Well, this thing really got exploited and very, very corrupt, a lot of fraud. And in July, there was like $30 billion given out under this program, well after COVID is over. And then there's
July of 2023.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, $30 billion. It's just ravishing the deficit. And finally, the IRS has kind of gotten onto it. In August, I guess they've made some moves. It's down to 17 million, and there's steps being made to get rid of it. But in the meanwhile, this money flows to the top of the pyramid.
Sure.
If you're an employer, and the people are making up fake startup companies and putting their crazy aunt in the attic on the payroll, or their kids, or relatives, just really corrupt. So it's just more redistribution of wealth up the food chain. Got a chart there. You can spot it on the article. U.S. net wealth shares, bottom 90% versus the top 0.1%. I'm not talking about the top 1%. I'm talking about the top 1/10 of 1%.
Right.
Look at those lines.
So is that on your homepage?
That's in the article. That's on the article that the neoliberal political economy article, about 2/3 of the way down.
Oh, hold on. There we go.
So I was just kind of reading through sort of Susan Strange's warnings.
There it is. Yeah, that was the first one. Yeah, neoliberal political economy. A lot of this stuff is based on the modern monetary theory, where it's really more of just a convoluted kind of excuse for the Fed to print more money, which is really what it is. Like, we have an endless supply of money, right? Which is modern monetary theory. It doesn't have to be tied to anything, right?
Yeah, and that's very pro-oligarchy, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't necessarily favor all business. That's the thing. Just like it doesn't favor all people. So you'll notice that the bottom 90%, notice their share of the wealth. It's just dropped from the Reagan days to now. The Reagan days is about 35% of the wealth. And then now it's down to about 20. Meanwhile, the top 10th of 1% have gone from 5% in 1980 up to over 20% of the wealth. Well, you got to have some policies in place to do that, and this modern monetary theory is a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is Susan Strange.
Yeah, and I spotted a really interesting piece that there's some details in there that if you read between the lines are really significant. So you see in the direct messages I sent you that one piece about let's watch that starting at about, did I give you the time to start on it?
Yeah, I think it's keyed up here. Hold on.
Now think about this as we watch it. This is what's going on now in terms of the debt cycle and these higher interest rates. And the nature of this is a little bit of a revelation to me. This is actually kind of new information for me, what this guy says.
It's only trickling out, dribbling out instead of flowing full blast like it had been for the last decade. So who will be first affected by this? Borrowers who rely, who depend on their lines of credit. For many small to mid-cap companies in the Russell 2000 or the S&P 1500, lines of credit are more than a lifeline. They are critical to their operations. Large caps like the largest of the S&P 500 won't be affected. Companies like Apple have such large cash reserves. They
and
could
the
act
banks,
as their own bank for 100 years and be fine. And this new report that we're about to look at exposes that division more so than I've seen before. This actually explains clear as a bell why the official data shows that we've yet to fall into recession. Wait till you see this. And combined with the data that we have on corporate loan maturities, it explains a hell of a lot, including how we're coming into this very rough period. And that's why, to survive any sort of market shakeup, it's imperative to acquire real assets.
Skip this part right here because he's going to do a promotion. You don't need to hear him talking about art or something. He makes some great comments, but he sticks a right below that. I told you where to go, like 7 minutes or something. Otherwise, we got to listen to him promote art.
Okay, so it's at so it starts at 3:15. This is our sort of 5:35.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back there.
The first part there was important, but we got to get to the meat of this, the heart of it. So basically what's happened is that the smaller companies depend on bank credit lines, and that's where the interest rates have really gone up. Meanwhile, the larger firms have gone into the longer term debt market, which has lower interest rates as the interest rates are inverted. You know, you can get 5.5% on a treasury, 6-month treasury, and it's only 4.2 on a 10-year treasury. So that's reflected in the corporate bond market too, and in the short-term credit line markets when they roll these bonds over. So a lot of these smaller companies can't really roll their bonds over, or they're not really in the bond market. The big guys are. So they've raised a bunch of money in the longer-term market, which is inverted, and have flipped over and taken advantage of this interest rate spread. So what's this? He provides the data, the effect of this. Maybe he explains it a little better than I did, but Robert?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at 5:35.
Yeah, we were there. We were there 5:35.
Okay, below that, I gave you another. Let's see if I got it.
Let's see. And then the punchline is at 8 minutes. So
yeah, it's 5:35. I think you started at 3:15. Go to 5:35.
I did a 5:35. Did you see it?
No.
We started right here at 5:35. Right. What did I go? Mitch McConnell or something?
I think you're a little confused because I sent you initially. I said start at 3:30, 3:15.
Yeah,
then I realized this guy did an art commercial in the middle of this thing.
I played it.
Well, try 5:35 and see what happens.
Yeah, so I played it. Can you see it on the screen?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, I don't know what happened before.
Especially as companies in aggregate are now a net beneficiary of higher rates. Yet beneath the mega caps, the vast bulk of companies are in big trouble. Now he goes on to explain what we've been highlighting on this channel for the last 6 months, what we just outlined at the beginning of the video, this burning sensation that most of the corporate world is feeling right now from the banks turning off the flow of easy money. But he found something important. Check this out. He writes this: one thing is certain, the US corporate sector in aggregate is a massive net borrower. We can see that clearly from the Fed's Z1 data. Hence, normally when interest rates rise, so too do net debt payments, squeezing profit margins and slowing the economy. But not this time. Corporate net interest payments have instead collapsed. He goes on to ask, what on earth is going on here? All right, so he writes this. Take a listen. The collective SG macro brain reached the conclusion that large companies which are able to access the corporate bond market have effectively played the yield curve in reverse, borrowing long fixed and depending short variable, and becoming net beneficiaries of higher rates. So higher rates have added 5% to profits over the last year instead of deducting 10% plus from profits as usual. Hence, it's not just greedflation that has boosted U.S. profit margins and delayed the recession. Interest rates simply aren't working as they once did. All right, so this is where it gets interesting. Take a look at this. He writes, U.S. company net interest payments have collapsed over the last year despite rising rates. This is the opposite of what you'd expect to see right now, folks. Why in the world would net interest payments be lower today than they were a few years ago? Makes no sense, right? Well, what they found when digging into this is that the mega caps, the largest of the Fortune 500, your Apples, your Googles, your Amazons, Nvidia, etc., all had seen this coming and prepared the way that you'd expect any smart and effective executive team would. They locked in their rates and paid off a significant portion of their debts right at the start when the Fed's monetary policy went into action, basically made very prudent decisions. And when you
got the memo.
For example, between the mega caps and the small caps, the size of the loans come from the mega caps. They're just dealing with such amounts of capital. And we can see here how the big guys aren't feeling any pain so far. Here's the average interest rate by company.
Look at this.
Being paid right now. The interest rate paid by the largest 150 companies is virtually unchanged, but the mid caps are seeing their profits squeezed and the small caps are being crushed, absolutely crushed, the way that we've been talking about and had expected. Now, if you remember from the beginning of the video, when we discussed the interest coverage ratio, a way to determine how likely a company is to be able to meet their loan obligations, well, take a look at this, folks. This is as clear as it gets for what's unfolding right now. The higher your interest coverage ratio is, the more likely you'll be to service your debt payments. Anything under 1 means you're filing bankruptcy. Anything under 2 means you're working with very tiny margins. Any hiccup in your operations probably would jeopardize your ability to repay your debt. Well, look at the average ICR for the Russell 2000, sitting around 2%. But realize this is lagging. They calculate this based on a company's earnings before interest and taxes. So it's coming from their 2022 full year earnings numbers, which means it's much worse than we see here. And again, this is an average. So a portion of these companies probably have negative ICRs, which means start readying for bankruptcies, folks. You can see it here on the wall of corporate debt maturities that are quite literally barreling down right now. 2023 is a tiny fraction of what's coming next year. And in 2025, then look at 2026. If rates were to stay elevated over the next few years, we will see a plethora of corporate bankruptcies. And with this loan maturity schedule about to go into overdrive and the number of bankruptcies already surging, which you could see right here, ask yourself what in the world is in store for next year.
Okay,
right,
that's
if you
good.
enjoyed this video.
All right.
So this is no accident. This is no accident.
Yeah.
This is all by design.
Yep.
I don't go through life and looking at these topics as you well know, thinking this is all a big quinky dink.
Right.
This has been set up to benefit the mega companies, the mega banks, and just start bankrupting a bunch of small players and just taking over their markets and taking over their assets. It's a big loot being set up.
Yep. It's what happened during the stock market crash of the 20s, right?
Yeah, or the classic one, which you can read about on my site, is 1907. The panic of 1907, J.P. Morgan, which led to the establishment of the Federal Reserve, where J.P. Morgan basically organized a rescue of smaller and regional banks and just took them over and consolidated them all. They're going to consolidate the whole economy under a bunch of big multinationals.
Well, there's your pathway to globalism.
Absolutely,
because
this will really
globalism
work.
is globalism is an aggregation of multinational corporations, ultimately, and how it's governed moving forward will not be by any politician or any state, but by boards. We saw
kind of a dry. We kind of saw a little bit of a dry run on the March March banking crisis that started up. That was kind of a dry run of it in the banking sector.
Yep.
Well, there's more of that coming too, because a lot of these smaller and regional banks have locked, the zero interest rates trapped them into putting too much of their money into longer dated securities at 1%, 2%, 3%. The people that made all the loans at 3% mortgages that ran the housing prices up and well, that's over because now it's 7.5%, 8%. So those loans that those guys made are really hurting. It's even affected people like Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab has a bank. Watch out, watch out for
Schwab
them.
or Klaus Schwab. Which Schwab are we talking about?
Charles Schwab, the big brokers, has a bank that's made a lot of way too many low interest return loans.
So
they don't mature for a while. They just kind of they're extended out.
Yeah.
This is neoliberalism. This is neoliberalism. It's very dog eat dog, very predatory. They set the system up this way.
Right. And a lot of what's done to set it up is through things like public policy. The political class will go in and will either pass laws to either restrict the ability for people like you and I over a period of time, restrict our ability to profit off of whatever it is we're working on or investing in. Meanwhile, deregulating certain things for other groups of people like corporations, which I believe are now considered people, by the way. So the political class sets it all up, right? And through public opinion, the political class can also kind of move the economy in certain ways. So we've talked about this on my show. When you get somebody like Anheuser-Busch in Bud Light, right? And people think that they shot themselves in the foot because they had Dylan Mulvaney on the can, and there was a huge backlash, and the public really showed Anheuser-Busch. Well, really, one of the main shareholders in InBev is BlackRock, just like BlackRock is one of the main shareholders in any of InBev's competitors. They don't care. They don't care if Budweiser loses money, because their competitors who you might go to instead of Budweiser will make money. They don't care. They're invested. So you have BlackRock, Vanguard. They've gamed the system so that it, even if people are making a stand theoretically and putting their wallets to work and to speak for their ideology or their political beliefs, they don't care, right? So we've entered into this territory where even profit is no longer a concern, right? And unfortunately, what happened is that a lot of people said, fuck it, I'm not drinking Bud Light. And it was effective. And so you have a lot of local distributors who had to lay people off. The truck drivers, the guys that bring the swill to the liquor store.
Yeah, and extend this to, we did the show on San Francisco, the San Francisco bust, right? We did that, right?
Yeah.
San Francisco is getting even worse. I see Nordstrom's has closed a store that's been open for 35 years in a key location in San Francisco.
And I think big ones, it's like Magnin is leaving San Francisco. And that's a a keystone like establishment.
Would I be too suspicious to believe that these woke policies in San Francisco are by design to gut that town and ruin it and pick up the bargains?
Well, so we should do another show on this, but they're turning San Francisco into a ghost city, right? That's what they're doing. And Oakland, if you follow what's happening in Oakland across the bay, you're watching the A's leave, the Raiders left, the Warriors left, and Oakland is horrible, right? And the mayor of Oakland is this woman, Thao Tan, I think. She's Hmong. And she rents, right? She's the mayor of Oakland and she rents. And I thought to myself, well, what kind of signal is that sending to the people of Oakland? She's temporary, right? She's not even a full resident there. She's paying rent to somebody else. And then if you look outside of, I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's this secretive group that is buying 50,000 acres.
Right. Right. You got that story anywhere? You got that story at hand? Or yeah, that's a good story. So, a bunch of tech billionaires are basically setting up a new city. I don't know where they've got the land.
So it's around Travis Air Force Base.
Yeah.
So here's what I think they're going to do. That at some point Travis Air Force Base is going to be decommissioned, and it will become a private airport hub, and it will serve this new city, right? And you got your
15-minute city right there. Yeah.
Right. So what you're going to see now is San Francisco and Oakland are the models for basically emptying out their customer base, their manufacturing base, their commercial base, and their populace. Where are those people going to go? So we're going to see now the redesign of brand new cities. So that they can't. So this is a version of Maui in some ways, right? They can't go in and turn San Francisco into a Green New Deal city. There's too much aging infrastructure.
Well, they may be able to go into places like that and buy the buildings and the infrastructure at 10 cents on the dollar,
maybe,
and redevelop it.
Maybe, but it's much easier and cheaper to do it by code and all the things that they require just by doing it from scratch, right?
Yeah.
So now you have like a whole new set, just like when we had the reset, really what I call the reset of 1849, 1850. Like there's huge changes happening around the world at that time. And then out of that, you have like the new robber barons and people that we talk about, the Rockefellers and the Morgans and the Van Dynes and all these people. There's going to be a new version of that cast. And they're going to be the ones that will be like the robber barons of the next reset with these 15-minute cities. And that's why this is happening in places like San Francisco, in Oakland. You're seeing the model at work, and they'll just move that population. And so what will happen? There's another one in Nevada that's being built as well. So we're going to see more of these things. And to your point, and bringing it back to people that have the sort of the middle tier businesses, the low and middle tier businesses that rely on the credit lines, they're not going to be able to get it.
Right. They're already cutting them off. And so you're going to see a bunch of these firms fail. That's going to be your big hard recessions that's coming. It has to.
Right.
But meanwhile, these big megas are kind of insulated.
Well, this is one of the dirty secrets about Trump. That people, and again, I'm not here to badmouth Trump, and look, he's interesting in his own right. But Trump is super pro big corporation. He loves big corporations. Like when he owned the New Jersey Generals in the USFL, that wasn't enough for him. He saw the USFL as mom and pop. He saw the USFL as mainstream. Many of us would say, "Fuck, you got a football franchise? You got Herschel Walker on your team? You're dating Marlon Maples because of this. This isn't too bad. Trump wanted to be part of the NFL. They didn't want him in. They didn't want to let Trump in. And he sued the NFL for antitrust laws. He thought he could Al Davis the NFL, and he lost. They gave him $1 check, right? Well, he won the case, but the jury awarded Trump $1 for his victory against the NFL. So Trump is pro big corporation. Right? What happened in 2020 was we saw Main Street just get kicked in the nuts, right? They're barely hanging on by a thread. So if Trump becomes president, I don't necessarily think he's going to turn the key and bring Main Street back again. Like, this is who he is. This is how he's always been.
No, all these guys are that way.
Yeah, yeah. So again, he's got some interesting parts. He's disruptive. I think Trump is a huge disruptor, and he got the dialogue started about, you know, the left and the media and wokeism, and so you know, I'm grateful for that addition that Trump has brought to the awakening. We'll call it the awakening. But the other side of it is that, you know, he brought BlackRock in. I mean, he had an executive order in 2020. I think it was the summer of 2020. There was a reorganization. He fucking brought BlackRock in and put him right in between the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. So BlackRock,
a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, those are no coincidences.
Yeah, BlackRock is technically a part of the government. Okay, people, wrap your head around that.
In some ways, he almost doesn't have any choice because it's just so captured and so deep. And
well, I think at that time, again, this is just my theory. At that time, he was fighting for his political life, and so, you know, Trump is business, and Trump has done business deals with people that he probably doesn't like, right? But he knows that it's business, and so I think he made business decisions basically to keep his presidency alive and hopefully get elected for real. It didn't work at the end of the day. So, well, Russ, where do you think it's all going?
We can catch up on the economy in one of our future shows, and I think we'll bring.
I'd love to do that. I've really gotten into Thomas Sowell.
I think this stuff is kind of unfolding.
Yeah.
And I think everybody got a pretty good basis of some of the tricks that are being played right now by the system.
So just to summarize what that guy was saying, for the lay person, basically what the big boys did is they used their available cash and they paid down
and insider information, you know, that the rates are going to be fairly aggressively raised.
Right. So then what did they do? They moved into the short-term market, right?
They raised money in the longer-term market. They raised extra bonds in the longer-term market, which is cheaper. See, the interest rates are cheaper, especially for them.
Right.
Because they have access to the corporate market. And then did an arbitrage to put their money short-term into the short-term market, which yields more than the corporate market. And meanwhile, the little guys don't have access to the corporate market, or if they did have access to it, you know, at the low interest rates, those bonds are coming due and they'll collapse because they can't really refinance. Most corporate bonds are very short-term. You go to Wall Street for corporate bond, they're typically like 5 years. So you start counting from 2020, 2021. That's when most of these very low interest rate corporate bonds were made. A lot of these are coming up for a rollover, and it'll just happen like a glacier going downhill. This will be chunks at a time, and they'll mostly be these smaller companies, like in what's called the Russell 2000.
Wow.
And the megas will just be picking up the pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. I marvel at like the savants that have, you know, a global understanding of these models and how they operate. Like, to me, that goes back to that scene in Network with Ned Beatty and Peter Finch. You have tampered with the forces of nature, Mr. Beale, right? And he gets into this whole thing about the economy and the macro, right? I mean, that scene in Network has some great scenes. That one is basically says it all. And there are people that understand that shit. Not only do they understand it from a static perspective, they understand it from a fluid perspective.
But very few people get the fact that it's a conspiracy. You can't put the word conspiracy out there. It's like a no-go zone. But that's what this is. Vivek doesn't get it, and I don't know that the guy that presented that information necessarily even gets it. He understands what's going on. He can see the effects. But what started all this?
Even if Vivek did get it, the question is, what would he do? Right? What would he do about it? Because at that point, he would be Mr. Beale. And he would be scolded that you have tampered with the forces of nature.
You're right.
And they'd set him down in a room and they'd show him that scene, right?
You got that? Can you get that scene? Maybe we got to watch it real quick.
Okay, so it's at the end. Let me see if I can play it here. A lot of times, YouTube.
That'd be a good sign out to the show.
It'll ding me, but let's try it. I'm game. Let's see.
I got to go back and start watching some of these old movies. I enjoyed The Godfather after 50 years.
You have meddled with the forces of nature.
Okay.
All right, this is it, right? This is if you want to pull one scene out from a movie that describes
unraveling this system.
That describes how the macroeconomic system works. This is it. This is the red pill that people need to take with a nice shot of whiskey. Here we go. Now, Howard Beale is a newscaster, and he told people to divest in their shares of this media company because the media company was evil. Okay. Speaking of Godfather, there's Robert Duvall right there. You see him?
Oh, wow. And Ned Beatty.
There's Ned Beatty's about to give everybody a lesson in the forces of the economy. Here we go.
I'd like to try to sell something to you. Valhalla, Mr. Beale. Please sit down.
Valhalla. Shuts the curtains. This is going to get serious.
Kind of the green lamps on the table.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rands, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale? You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
It has been
since man crawled out of the slime.
Crawled out of the slime, right?
And our children will live, Mr. Beale, to see that perfect world in which there's no war or famine, oppression or brutality. One vast and ecumenical holding company for whom all men will work to serve a common profit, in which all men will hold a share of stock, all necessities provided, all anxieties tranquilized, all boredom amused. And I have chosen you, Mr. Beale, to preach this evangel.
Why me?
Because you're on television, dummy. 60 million people watch you every night of the week, Monday through Friday.
I have seen the face of God.
You just might be right, Mr. Beale.
Wow.
He knew too much. Okay. Yeah. That's a good one to wrap up on.
That says it all. Right there. Right. And I think also what he's hinting at too, even though I don't think Patty Chayefsky, who wrote the script, actually had this in mind, but it sounds a whole lot like you'll own nothing and be happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, you'll have your own little, you know, you'll be a stakeholder. You have a stake. You'll have a stake in something, and we'll take care of everything for you.
Yeah, it really isn't such a big secret after all.
No, absolutely not. Russ, we covered a lot of ground today. This is, I think, might have been our most eclectic offering, but it was great. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. See you folks in a month. I shall return.
So shall we go out on the let's go out on the theme, Russ.
Okay.
Here we go. The great Russ Winter. Check him out at winterwatch.net. We'll have him back in a month. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll be back here on Sunday night for Sunday Night Astro Live. Until then, take care, mods. Thank you for your participation in the chat as always. Chataria, you're the best. And we're out here. Bye for now.
Winter is coming.
Might just be the cold.
Winter is coming.
It's cold outside.
You don't know cold.
Winter is coming for him.
It's either me or this cold, and It doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
And winter is coming!
You look cold, boys.
Tis a bit nippy.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
That's cold.
Winter is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cold.
It's cold and it's wet.
Winter is coming.
You're crying because you're cold?
You're a long way from home. And winter is coming.
I imagine you might be rather cold.
And winter is coming.
No, that's all right. I'm fine.
You're not. You're freezing.